Happy Hanukkah. It feels good to say that. Hanukkah, we're here the second night of Hanukkah, which means we light two flames. So I want to begin by wishing everyone here and everyone wherever you may be in the world a very happy and illuminating Hanukkah, festival of lights, where we celebrate the power of light, and especially how light dominates and vanquishes darkness. So may everybody individually vanquish and conquer every type of darkness that may be in your life, not through having to fight any painful wars, but through bringing light into your life, and that naturally and automatically will dispel the darkness. So may the darkness be dispelled, whether it's psychological or other blocks and impediments, or it's areas in life that we aspire to, but something is not letting it break through. So may this Hanukkah be a breakthrough for everyone here, and everyone in cyberspace, and everyone on Earth. When you release a little flame, a little light, especially according to modern physics, it changes the universe, because energy never dissipates. So once you ignite a flame, that flame in some way adds light to the entire world. But it always begins with the small universe, which is each of us as an individual. So, as I said, may that light shine inside your life, and in practical terms, be blessed with health, and with those that need to find a soulmate, or recognize the soulmate that maybe God sent their way. Other blessings in parnasa, livelihood, or other areas of life. We say, Bona Chaim is Revicha is an expression. The children, livelihood, health, and every possible way, all in abundance materially and spiritually. That's my Hanukkah greeting for everyone. And though it may be somewhat generic, but everybody could apply it to their own personal life in their own particular way. So, being that it's Hanukkah, we will actually do the lighting of the Menorah at some point. When the cosmos call to us, and we have a cosmic itch, we will do that, and we'll sing maybe a Hanukkah melody or two. But before we do that, and that can be experienced by everyone, even in cyberspace, the jelly donuts, however, and the other delicacies, that cannot be done virtually. The good news, however, that virtually does not have any calories. So that's maybe the upside. But before we do, like anything in life, it's always best to present a little introduction, and to appreciate any real experience. It's always best to know what we're experiencing. And as always, a common theme that I always address, which is the relevance of the holidays, so the relevance of the Parsha, the relevance of any particular Jewish tradition or custom in psychological and spiritual and emotional, personal terms. So of course the same question applies to Hanukkah. What is its relevance to our life? Who cares, basically, to put it more bluntly? It's true that approximately 2,400 years ago, in the time of the Second Temple, the Greco-Syrians desecrated the temple, and the miracle of Hanukkah was that even though it was a few, they conquered and they were able to win over the many, as we say in the Ala Nisim prayer, in the service that we say in the Shemoneh Esrei and during Hanukkah, and as well as in the benching. So, but as a result of that battle being won, they were also able to search for and found, after a search, one untouched, untarnished cruse of oil to be able to light the menorah, because they had defiled the temple, they had desecrated it, and they desecrated every type of oil. And they found this little bit of oil that had enough to burn for one night, and the story goes, the miracle goes, that it burned for 8 nights. So it was really 2 miracles. One, that they found the cruse of oil, and the second, that it burned for 8 days. And hence we honor and commemorate that every year by celebrating Hanukkah. Hanukkah literally means to dedicate. That's where the word Hanukkah comes from, the word like chinuch, educate. But it's like the dedication, to rededicate. At that time it was the rededication of the temple, and specifically the menorah and the altar. So we dedicate it, and we rededicate it by lighting the menorah every year. Hanukkah for 8 days. The menorah has 8 branches, and every night we light 1 and then 2 and 3, 4, all the way till next Tuesday night, when we'll be lighting the line final 8 candles. So that's the historical context. But nevertheless, the most important question, as I said, is what is the relevance to our lives today? I mean, it's always beautiful to commemorate and to honor something that happened, a miracle, and not take for granted gifts and blessings in our life. So that's a given. But still, it's one thing when you commemorate something that happened so long ago. It's another if it's happening today in your life. It's obviously will be much more appreciated and much more personal, and something that we can relate to, as opposed to just remembering a ritual and tradition from back then. So as those familiar with the theme and the approach that I always take is true around the across the board, around the entire calendar, whether it's Passover or Sukkot or Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or any particular day, the relevance. So here we talk about the relevance of Hanukkah to our lives. And of course there are many messages and many lessons. I have discussed quite a few over the years. I want to touch upon one particular one, which may have touched upon before, but not elaborated on, as I would like to do this Hanukkah night. And that is the power of light. Let there be light, which is, as everyone knows, basically the third verse in the Bible. When in the beginning God created heaven and earth, and then it says, the earth was, in Yiddish we used to translate pust and vist. What it means in English is the world was chaotic and empty and void, devoid. And there was a darkness that covered all of existence. And the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. That's the cryptic second verse of the Bible. And then comes the third verse, and God says, Vayemer Elokim yehi or vayhi or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. In a way, these 3 verses capture the story of every life, every one of us. We all have a beginning. So just like here, the beginning God created heaven and earth, we all have our beginning when our heaven and earth was created on a microcosmic level. Elam katan zeh. So just like in a macrocosm, we all have our birth when we began, our conception, our birth. And some mystics explain that we have many births in our lifetime. The first birth, as I said, is a conception. The second is when you emerge from your mother's womb. There'll be other stages when the umbilical cord is cut physically. Then the umbilical cord has to be cut many times psychologically as we go through our adolescence. Some people still have not cut their umbilical cord. I don't mean, again, physically, yes, or else there'd be a problem, But sometimes it's a long ball and chain that you're connected to your mother and your father, and their parents can still haunt you. Or they have a very positive influence that continues to impact us. We are our parents' children, after all. So there are many types of births. So in the beginning God created heaven and earth. Each of us has a beginning. And the beginning of life, it always begins in darkness. First of all, simply the 9 months that a child is in its mother's womb, it's a pretty dark place. It's a very comfortable place, and the child gets everything it needs, but as far as light goes, it's inside of a cavern, inside of a womb. And then when we come into the world, even though physically you can say yes, when a child emerges from the womb it sees the light of day for the first time, but that's physical light. On a psychological, spiritual level, we all begin life without having direction. And we go through years searching for that direction. So when someone says, I'm looking for my purpose in life, why am I here? Or I'm looking what my talents are, how should I spend my time? We don't have, when we're born, we're not given an operator's manual or a little booklet, a message that tells us here's what you should be doing. Part of life's journey is seeking out the light, seeking out clarity. So technically, if you think about it, when you wake up every morning, which again is a birth, another birthing every morning, a rebirth, and you don't know what the day will bring. We basically walk in a world where we live in a dark world. So even though we have today modern technology and we have a lot of bright light, but psychologically, emotionally, it's a dark world. And you see it in relationships, and you see it in other areas, that it takes effort, it takes work to find clarity, to find a clear and bright path. So that's the second verse. In the beginning there was the heaven and earth, and then comes darkness covers entire existence. But it's not all hopeless. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. It says, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters, which means that something hovers. There's a spirit that hovers even in times of confusion or darkness or chaos and void. And then comes the third verse, which says, let there be light, which is the mission. Just as God created light in this universe, we too have a mission, a commandment that is like the Talmud, like the Zohar says. God looked into the Torah like a blueprint. Istako baraiso bara alma. He looked into the Torah and created the universe. So too, a human being should look into the Torah and sustain the universe. So we are essentially partners with God. God provides the resources, we actualize them. And the interesting statement that when you say Eraisa, in Hebrew the word Eraisa, Istako baraisa, is the Aramaic word for Torah. Torah. How does Eraisa work as Torah? So it says there's another place in the Zohar that Eraisa consists of two words, Yaisa. Yaisa in Aramaic means to draw, to transmit. Yaisa, to bring, to transmit light. So Torah is essentially a light transmitter. And that's also the word Torah itself comes from the root Or. Torah Or. The light of Torah. Torah is the same root as the word Or, as light in Hebrew. And Torah also also comes from the word Hera, which means direction, instruction. What is a GPS? What is a roadmap? A roadmap doesn't change the landscape, doesn't change the terrain, but it shines a light to let you see it and understand what the roads are up ahead. So imagine driving a car at night without any headlights. God forbid. It's quite dangerous. So the road is there, but you can't see it. What light does, interestingly, it's a very paradoxical entity, and we shall discuss it tonight, is light doesn't do anything actually, but it does everything. When you turn on a light in a dark room, nothing changes. Everything in the room remains exactly as it was. The only difference is you can now see it. The light beams reflect off the objects of the room, enter your eye, and you're able to see what is going on. Which means if there's a chair, there's a table, there's steps, there are other objects. If you can't see it, God forbid, even healthy things can become very destructive. You can fall down a step, you can bump into a table. So essentially what light does, it's clarity. And clarity on its own doesn't have a substance. What is clarity made of? Not very clear what clarity is made of. No pun intended. But clarity is the difference between life and death. If you were walking down a path, we all walk down the path of life. And as it says in another verse, I said, behold, I give you today the path of life and the path of the opposite of life. So when you have a light that shines and gives direction, you can walk down that path. If you walk down the wrong path, it can be the difference between life and death. It can be the difference between spending 30 years of your life searching the wrong place, being with the wrong person, making big mistakes. So the greatest blessing in life is clarity. If someone says to you, this is the path to walk on, it's equally blessing if they tell you this is the path not to walk on. So clarity is shining a light. Now, the metaphor of light, of course, I was using metaphors that are physical, but now let's define light as clarity, as direction. Finding a person when you're young, a mentor, or somebody that is wise, that you trust, and gives you a little direction, can change the entire course of your trajectory, your life. That little direction, that little wisdom, at a time when you may have been confused, you may have been subjective, or you may have been at the edge of making a big mistake, someone says the right thing to you. And of course, God forbid, if you didn't have that person, lack of clarity can lead you down a path that can take years. And even after years, it means it's not always reversible. So so the idea of light is the greatest blessing in a way, because it's the blessing of clarity, it's the blessing of direction. So the Torah itself is that type of direction, because that's what it serves as, a blueprint. It's a blueprint for life. So going back to the message of Hanukkah light is the power of clarity. And as always, you can always appreciate something when you look at the contrast. If you didn't have it, what would the world be like? God forbid. I don't even want to describe it. It's too dark to describe. What would the world be like if there was no light? No light, period. It's almost like asking a question, what would it be like to be born blind and never see the beauty of this world, never see colors, never see people? It's hard to even fathom or imagine. What would life be like without the radiance, without the illumination? Everything would maybe be in place, but we wouldn't be able to experience it. We wouldn't have that direction. And the same thing, what is life like without clarity, without direction? Now that's a little easier to imagine because many people will experience that. But as the Baal Shem Tov says, there are two types of lack of clarity. One is you know that you don't know, and one is you don't know that you don't know, which is far worse. A darkness that conceals the fact that it's dark. So, essentially, Hanukkah is the counterbalance. It is the festival of lights. It is the festival, the holiday that teaches us and empowers us with the ability to generate light even when everything seems hopeless, even the darkest moments. So the story of Hanukkah, which happened thousands of years ago, but its message, its theme, is that power of light. And that theme is with us right here, right now. And in our world, the first step, of course, is to recognize that you're not necessarily in the brightest, lightest place in your life. And once you recognize that, you can come to step 2 and discover how do you generate light. But of course, if you think you're already in the light when you're not, that becomes a problem. Because you can convince yourself that darkness is light. You can convince yourself that confusion is clarity. So if you were in George Orwell's 1984, where war is peace and love is hate and so on, maybe that works. But in reality, if you convince yourself that what you have is a light and very clear path, and it really isn't, that can be the darkest of all paths. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone here is in any type of denial of that nature, but you may know one or two people on this earth that may be in that place. Because you see, we live in a world where we have many distractions, and we have many things that can keep us busy. And sometimes you need to hit rock bottom, or you need to have a crisis or some type of trauma, God forbid, to wake you up and see that things are not exactly that great. Leonard Cohen puts it right that the cracks is what lets the light shine in. And when you don't feel there are any cracks, which is of course an illusion, there is always cracks in life. When you think there are no cracks and you have it all worked out, it often conceals, and that is, as I said, the deepest type of darkness. So Hanukkah is about celebrating this type of light and discovering, number one, as I said, the miracle is a twofold one. Discovering there's light like that, and 2, letting it burn. More than just a day. 8 days, which means into perpetuity, in forever. That's the significance of the power of light. So, perhaps what we'll do right now, since I gave a little introduction on light, probably even better and easier for me to continue this discussion when we actually see light burning. So we definitely have light bulbs here, and or else you wouldn't be able to see this broadcast. However, Hanukkah has its own power, illuminating and igniting an actual flame. And tonight, as I said, is the second night of Hanukkah. So let us all join together, and we'll have our resident Cohen. Gary Salvat. What was your original name, by the way? It wasn't Salvat, right?
Solomonovitz.
Okay. Hungarian. Okay.
Long
that explains a lot of things.
Yeah, long history of Hungarian.
Yeah. So we're going to have Gary, we'll light the menorah, and the 2 blessings that we say. So we'll all rise. And after menorah, Gary will lead us in Moas Sur, and then I shall sing our Hanukkah specialty, Haner Salal, that I grew up with. And then we shall maybe have a donut or 2, and then continue this discussion. So, I ask you all to join me and join us all. One moment. Please stop 1 second, Gary. There's a whole...
the film rights.
Okay. We won't do anything without permission.
Yeah.
So, we light the menorah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher gidishanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavoseinu b'yamim hahem b'zman hazeh. Haneros halalu anu madlikim ala nisem al neflos vala chuos vala milchamos shosi solau seinu b'yamim hahem b'zman hazeh al yedei konei ha'akdosh michol mitzvah shmonas yimei Chanukah Haneros halalu kodesh heim ve'en lanu rishus lishtamesh b'hem ela l'rosam bilvad k'dei lahodos v'lhalel l'shimcha hagadol al nisecho, al niflosecho, v'al yeshuasecho. Moto yeshuasi, lecha noe l'shabeach, tikom veis tefilasi, l'sham toda nizabeach, v'esachim adbeach, Metzora Mabeya Ozegma Beshir Mizmor Hanukkah Hamizbeya Ozegma Beshir Mizmor Hanukkah Hamizbeya Brasava Nafshi V'yagam Kochichila Chaya mordu bekushi Shebod malchus egla Uyadai hagdala Hatzi ezes gula Chel paro v'chol zara Yadu ki even bimtzula Yevanim nikvetzu alai Azai v'mechashmanim Ufartu chamas migdalai V'temu galashmanim U'minasa kankanim Nasa nez lashashanim Yemei vina yemei shmona Kavoshir nanim Chasov zeroa kochecha Bekarev keit haishua Nikam nikmastam avodecha Me'umah rasha Ki achalanu haishua V'yen keit li me'ara L'chei amon betel tamon Akim lanu roa shiva. Happy Hanukkah!
Gary, every year better and better. Some years accompanied by drums, some by didgeridoos. We'll get there. So, my childhood, I grew up, and we always sing this Haneros Halalu, which I shall sing for you, with your permission. As I've shared in the past, this song is relatively longer than usual. And they say it was composed by Hasidim of the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, who would make rare appearances, public appearances, but one of the times he would come out would be to the lighting and kindling of the Hanukkah Menorah. And being that it was so precious for the Hasidim and his students and the disciples to see him, because it was so rare, so they say they composed a longer song than usual, that way they kept him out there longer, so they could spend more time together. It was, a sign of affection, endearment. So I shall sing this with your permission. It's Diddy-oy, 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 Chol Shmein Nasimei Chanukah Neiros Alalu Keideshem. Chol Shmein Nasimei Chanukah Neiros Alalu Keideshem. Chol Shmein Nasimei Chanukah Neiros Alalu Keideshem. Keideshem, 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 Keideshem. V'yein lanu reshus. Lishtamesh bahem, Lishtamesh bahem, Lishtamesh bahem. Chol Shmein Nasimei Chanukah Neiros Alalu Keideshem. Chol Shmein Nasimei Chanukah Neiros Alalu Keideshem. V'yein lanu reshus Lishtamesh bahem. Elo L'reison bilvad, bilvad, Kedei Leideis Ulalel, Leideis Ulalel, Shimcha HaGadol. Leideis Ulalel, Leideis Ulalel, Shimcha HaGadol. Al Nisecha Secha v'yal Yeshua Secha, Al Nisecha v'yal Niflei 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 Secha v'yal Yeshua Secha. Freilich Chanukah, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. I hope I did justice to the nigun, to the song, which talks about light. That's how the song, the words began. The words we say after we light the menorahs, Haneres Halal, these flames that we kindle tonight. It talks about the sanctity of the flames and the way they commemorate the miracles and the events that took place back then. But you say, Bayomim Ahem, Bizman Hazeh, just as it was in days of yore, it should also be Bizman Hazeh in our time. Which brings me back to what we've been discussing here, the theme of light in our lives right here. So now that we have an actual physical demonstration here, so studying a flame can teach us many, many lessons in life. And as I said earlier, it's ultimately the message of bringing light into a dark world, into a dark life. And let me just qualify again when I say dark. Dark doesn't always mean that it appears dark. Anyone that has ever experienced confusion, and indecisiveness, the inability to make a decision due to the fact that you're not sure. You're not sure of what? You're not sure what path to take. It's dark. You're in the dark. All that is manifestations of darkness. So I don't think there's anyone that's immune to moments, if not even more than moments. Some of us feel we're living in the dark all the time. And light is an anomaly. But however you perceive your life, there's no doubt that we live in a darker world, and it takes a lot of blessing, mazel, and also wisdom to find direction, real direction. And direction doesn't mean just the ability to survive and to play defense and not get hurt. Direction means to actually have a path which can help you actualize your greatest potential, live up to your deepest aspirations, and realize your dreams, and realize your what you are created for. And as long as you don't have that, we can say we're in a state of darkness. So the mystics and all the wise people throughout history always knew that existence, by definition, is a lonely, dark place. And the fact that many of us, as I said, may think, or feel that it's not so dark, it's like the prophet says, there's some imcheshach le'er. We're able to deceive ourselves into thinking that darkness is light, and that light is darkness. You can see this whenever you ever had these like infuriating arguments with friends or with strangers, and you get nowhere, and you're convinced that you see it clearly, and that person thinks that they really know, and it's very clear that they're just completely in delusion. Any of you ever had that experience? And whatever you say doesn't really help. And especially when we're subjective. Subjectivity, by definition, can be called maybe the darkest of all darkness. And again, the darkness is subtle. It's subtle, when you know it's dark, and it's, everyone will agree that World War II, the Holocaust, was a dark time. We'll agree to times of war and oppression, when people are being hurt or killed, or that's dark. But many people would say today, compared to that, it's pretty bright times. And it's true, of course. I mean, there's no way we can minimize the anguish and the murder and the senseless deaths of so many innocent people during war and so on. But to say that this is a bright world would have to also say that people are not hurting anyone. We're not making mistakes. In many ways, the challenge today is much greater than it was then, because then it was very clear who the enemy was. Today, the enemy is far, far more subtle, far harder to discern and define. And the fact that we are living in freedom and we have the ability to do anything we want to do doesn't necessarily mean we have direction. I see people, and I've always looked I always look for the light in things, but nevertheless, part of it is also recognizing, honestly, seeing that many people wandering their lives, wasting their years, and with so many different distractions and entertainment. And basically, you can have with the amount of cable channels today, you can essentially watch a channel every hour of your life and always have something new to watch. Now with the internet, if you really want to go for it, you can surf the internet and it's endless. You can just feed a steady diet of. I saw this website. It was called. What was it called? What was it called? Not unnecessary. Something like unnecessary knowledge or something like that. No, it was a different name, a cooler name. Something like unnecessary wisdom or something like that. It's actually pretty interesting stuff there. But, those interesting things that you realize they're not necessary, but they just happen to be interesting. What was it called? Maybe. It'll come to me. But, so today you can even make things from unnecessary, seemingly, experiences. So we live in a world today that is in many ways far, far more distorted than ever before, precisely because we have the illusion of progress. We have unbelievable, unprecedented communications, the ability to transcend time and space in ways that no one could have ever dreamed. And yet, the misery level of people is not necessarily lower than it once was. Maybe it's even higher. The crisis in the area of relationships, of personal relationships, intimacy, is at crisis levels. There's no question about it. The fact that we are able to adjust just shows the resilience of a human being. We can adjust anything. We adjust and then it becomes part of the norm. But if you really think about it in objective terms, it's a pretty dark situation when you think of the levels of abuse, dysfunctional homes, sexual molestation of children. Things that are unspeakable crimes, which in many ways, yes, does not look like a Holocaust as the Nazis murdering 6 million innocent Jews or others that were innocent. That's no question far greater in the sheer volume and also the sheer cruelty. But abusing a child in a home, by parents, by close ones, to me that's as much Holocaust than any Holocaust. And it's not a numbers game. And I don't want to minimize any of the crimes of the past, but we're not living in very healthy times. If you measure health not by standard of living and how many gadgets we have, but on the wholesomeness of our children and our families, and people really being involved in something that is making the world a better place, or are people mostly driven by self-interest? So self-interest per se may not be a dark thing, but it definitely doesn't lead to light in our lives. So I don't want to sound like some, this one of these fire and brimstone preachers with some scathing review of society today. The reason I'm mentioning it is only because it's important to state simply that we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that things are just great and we just need a little blessing here or there. Things are a pretty bad situation, frankly, from my point of view. However, it's bad, and the good news is that the enemy is not outside. The enemy is within. Which means during times of Hitler, he was the one in control. Within you could do nothing, unless God would intervene. There was a war being fought. Today the enemy is within, which means with a switch of a button, in a second's notice, you can go from darkness to light, and nobody can stop you. That's the blessing. But the curse, or the negative part of it, is because it's within, our subjectivity blinds us to think that things are not that bad. And I'm not going to go through the whole spectrum of social ills and so on. But one thing was I deal with people all the time, obviously, and what I see is that what people consider blessings ends up being usually their biggest curse, without exception. Almost every situation, I've talked to many people about this. You could think wealth is a great blessing, right? From Jewish point of view, we don't believe that the meek shall inherit the earth. Prosperity, wealth is considered a blessing in the Torah. and it's a blessing from God. I mean financial wealth. I don't just mean spiritual wealth. And yet, I see across the board that in most situations where there's a lot of wealth in a family, once it hits the next generation, it creates usually complete havoc. Families are torn apart. The one who earned the money, usually because he earned it, has a certain appreciation. But as soon as it's given to those that haven't earned it, and they think they've earned it, always creates problems. Now, it's still a blessing from my point of view. But the curse is that if you don't know what to do with it, if you delude yourself into thinking that wealth is what gives people happiness, and that if you have enough money, you see how people bow to worship money, which basically gives you also a very condescending attitude to anyone, because you see what people will do for it, and people how they will kiss up to someone that has a lot of money, how they will change their behavior, literally, physically. Even people with standards, it makes you quite cynical about what human beings are made of. So this great blessing can turn into one of the greatest curses. Statistics show that wealth, 2-3 generations later, are either all squandered and lost, or families have been completely torn apart over it, to the point that brothers will not talk to brothers and siblings and so on. You can check it out. Check out the statistics. Yet everybody still vies for it, and everybody says, okay, give me that test, so to speak. Because, tell me if there's no bigger darkness than such a request. The blessing should be like King Solomon asked, that blessing for wisdom. When you have wisdom, you'll have everything else. But how many people would ask for wisdom? Most people would ask for money if God said, grant me one wish. Give me money, and then I'll be able to find I'll have answers to all my problems. Even when we say it, we know that's not true. But it's still, that's how tempting it is. Because the material world, and I'm using now the words of the mystics, the material world is nothing less than tentacles that completely blinds us to any deeper realities. When you're caught up in something, obsessed with something, consumed by something that is instant gratification or something that you think is going to give you power, strength, glory, and so on, everything else, even the most important things, disappear. And no one should ever be tested, but this, unfortunately, many people have been, and very few have passed the test. Give people enough power, enough money, enough influence, and in most cases there will be corruption and greed and other distortions that follow. Because we are human beings, and just because you have a lot of something doesn't mean that you're no longer mortal, and that you're still not, and you've lost your weak spots or blind spots. So this is not meant to be, again, I'm not trying to not meant to be a what's the word for it, attack on the whole material world, but this is how the mystics look at the universe, and they see this as a dark world. Even when the sun is shining, it's a dark world. A dark world simply means when people could be walking down paths that are completely destructive and they think it's perfectly fine. The Talmud says a person will not commit a sin unless they have a moment of insanity. Why? But just for the record, that can be a plea that you could enter when you're standing on trial. What's a moment of insanity? So, I'll give you an example. There's a law in the Torah, halakha in the Torah, that when there's a thing called a shomer, where you hire someone, or maybe not even hire, someone volunteers to watch and protect, to be a guard over your property. So there's certain responsibilities. If it's someone who volunteered, obviously they have less obligations than someone that you've paid. And there's 4 categories actually in the Talmud that talk about 4 different. There's a person, a shomer chinam, which means essentially a volunteer guard. He has the least obligations. There's a shemer sacher, which is someone you rent or you hire, which obviously has more obligations because you paid him for it. And then there's a shoyel, and there's a leiva. There's someone that actually takes a loan from you. They're the most responsible because you did a favor for them. And then there's a seicher. There's someone who rents something from you. So each of these type of people has responsibilities to the person that whose property they're overseeing at the time. So there's the law of the shomer sacher, the one who you rent and you hire as a guard. Let's say you gave him an animal to watch, your cow. In the olden days, that was a significant thing. People who lived in an agricultural society, in agrarian societies, they had a farm. The cow, you gave your cow to watch. So there's certain responsibilities. Since you paid this person to watch your cow, So the cow does some damage, or the cow does something, or someone damages the cow. You're responsible, the guard, that is. But here's the scenario. And the Talmud is a very intricate book. Every detail is covered. Every I is dotted. It's like the fine print in any contract. What happens if this cow, you're walking with a cow, and the cow, there's a fire on the side of the road, and it jumps into the fire? Are you responsible? The answer is no. Because a healthy, normal cow, animal, will not jump into a fire. So unless the owner told you a stipulation, this cow happens to be insane and jumps into fires, how are you supposed to know? You're obligated to do the things that are normal, the normal process, the normal procedures of protecting a piece of property. You know, for example, the cow tramples in someone else's field. You're responsible because that can happen. Or cow steps and breaks a vessel, or enters another person's property, or gores another animal. But a cow that jumps into fire is considered a behemoth shaita, an animal that is insane, and this guard is not responsible. So we learn from this, even though this is a halachic piece and more Talmudic, we learn from this that even an animal doesn't do things that are self-destructive. It has instincts. So here's the explanation of the Talmud. If you knew that when you hurt another person, you're hurting yourself, there's no one on earth that would do that. Who would hurt themselves? A normal, healthy person does not self-mutilate. The reason we can hurt another person is because we don't feel they're part of us. We're blinded. So the Talmud is saying, anyone who does a sin is actually like putting their hand in fire and don't know it's fire. Because no one would ever put their hand in fire. Is that not a dark world? Where we can do injustices to each other and not know that it's an injustice. So the mystics struggle with this issue because they say, and today physics confirms that the universe is one integral unit. Everything is parts of one larger entity. Even in the wild, in the jungle, with their predators and prey, it's all part of the balance. If predators will not feed on the prey will multiply in numbers that will destroy the earth. So there's a balance there. Unless humans get involved, this balance is very symmetrical. And you'll see, the creatures that are most consumed by larger creatures multiply in larger numbers. And vegetables, which are consumed by all creatures, and are more in number than all the animals on earth. Interesting. So there's a balance. There's a balance. Human beings are the only ones that can waver from the game plan, from the clock, symmetrical clock, and we can actually hurt each other, and not knowing that we're hurting ourselves. So this is what they struggle with, the teachers, the mystics, and the sages. How is it possible? The answer is because we live in a dark world, and we don't see the consequences of our behavior. You know, unfortunately, even when some of us do see consequences, it doesn't necessarily help either. That's another story. But especially if you don't see the consequences, or you minimize them. And that's exactly how it's seen, that all human beings are part of one organism. Does it make sense that a right hand would hit the left hand? And yet, people go to war, individuals, communities, groups, nations, and it's part of our history. It's so part of our history that it's considered as a given. Why? Because people, listen, we live in a world, survival of the fittest, dog eats dog. It's a world driven by narcissistic self-interest. So it's natural that we can hurt others. Some wonder how is it possible we even cooperate with each other. Some evolutionary theorists say that the reason we cooperate with each other, which goes against the grain of self-interest, is because it's also in our self-interest that we cooperate, because coexistence. If I can kill you, you can kill me. Or the synergy of two people joining together. So it's really personal self-interest, selfishness, that drives cooperation. The Torah, on the other hand, doesn't accept this minimalistic approach, but actually says a human being is created in the divine image, and we are fundamentally all one entity. And when we hurt each other, that's the anomaly, not when we cooperate with each other. So the fact that we could hurt each other, the fact that we could live in a world where people can be cruel to each other, can be hurtful, a lonely world, existential loneliness, is because it's a dark universe. And the way the Kabbalists put it, using the three verses as I was discussing in the beginning of the class, the three verses, just to reiterate. The beginning, God created heaven and earth. This heaven and earth is shrouded in darkness, in chaos, a void. but there's a spirit that hovers. And then verse number 3, which is the celebration of Hanukkah, Yehi Or, let there be light, is the story of our lives. Now the first two, you don't need to do anything. We all have a beginning, we're all born every morning, we're all born on earth, and then we live in a dark world. The third verse is our mission, to create light, just as God created light. And that, of course, is in essence the purpose of each of our lives, to be walking menorahs, to be walking flames that illuminate and warm everywhere we go. That is the general mission of all of existence. What distinguishes between you and me and other people, each of us individually, what distinguishes us is how you will illuminate. You have your unique light that's different than my light. You have your unique warmth that's different than mine. Each of us has our particular way of illuminating. But the general mission is to go into this dark world and not only not be overcome or neutralized by the darkness, but to be a shining light, a light unto nations, which begins with a light unto your own nation. Within a nation, sometimes but there's the nation within each of us. So we have a light within us, our soul. Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. The soul of the flame of God is the soul of a human being. But we also have a body. The body has its own interests. When you wake up in the morning, are you living in a light world or a dark world? It's up to you. If you follow your materialistic desires and the here and now, instant gratification, in our fast food society, then darkness dominates. And your soul is taken hostage by the body and its material needs. There's no choice but to go along. Which is the equivalent of the hammer telling the hand where to go. The instrument, the vehicle telling the driver where to go. When in fact it should be the other way around. Who should be the captain of the ship? The one who shines the light. And that is the soul. So the soul has light within it, but you have to make the choice whether you're going to access it. So in the morning when you say, Moda'ani lefanecha, you say, I acknowledge to you for returning my soul to me, you're basically acknowledging there's a light inside of me, and I'm committed for this new day that you've given me, God, to bring light into this world. And that whoever I meet, and whatever I do, I want to make it a little brighter than it was before I met it. Imagine if every person on earth felt that way, or thought that way. What would life be like? But the other is my interests. Me. And the me is a dark force. Not because necessarily everything you do for yourself is bad, but it's the root of all problems. Because it's me as opposed to everyone else. Flames, as we'll soon discuss, have the nature that they don't get diminished when they give. Everything in this material world gets diminished. Which is why so many of us, because of our own insecurities, have difficulty giving. You give half your food to someone else, you have less. You give half your money, you have less. You give your seat, you don't have a seat. Because this material world is defined, its parameters are time and space. And everything occupies a certain time, everything occupies a certain space. You give away of it, you seemingly are diminished. The soul, on the other hand, like a flame, doesn't have that, is not governed by those rules. The soul is a spirit. The soul, like a flame, can ignite millions of flames and not lose one drop of its own flame, not be diminished. Not only that, what happens when you light many, many flames? The original flame gets stronger, actually, because you bring them together. You see how it becomes a much greater, brighter flame. Another thing, when you look at two flames come close together, not like anything in the material world, they actually kiss to the point they become literally one. Try it out. You bring two flames, as they get a little closer, they start attracting to each other to the point that they will literally become one. We are inseparable, which is really what we call love. But for us, it becomes difficult because we're bodies. If we were just souls would not have a problem to love. But the body gets in the way. And I mean body, I don't mean just the physical body, I mean the self, the sense of self. Self-consciousness, self-interest, your self-contained needs. My needs are not your needs. It's always the issue in therapy. My needs are not being met. Okay, I'll give you some of your needs if you give me some of my needs. There's a you and I, which is fine. That's how we were created. But if it's the dominating force in a relationship, and a relationship becomes a negotiation, the meaning like a contractual negotiation, you give me something, I give you something, you don't have two flames becoming one. You may have two flames, but the bodies, the wicks, are the dominating force, and the wicks don't become one. Two wicks don't become one wick. Try it out. You can try this as a home experiment. Take a flame and a wick, and see what happens. This is you. Your body is the wick, your soul is the flame. And you learn many lessons. Guarantee you'll learn lessons even beyond what I've shared here. A flame is the only thing that defies gravity, that we can see with our physical eyes. It's the only thing that defies gravity. In this room right now, the only thing that defies gravity are those three flames. You and I and everyone here, and every object in this room is grounded. Gravity. This defies gravity. The only thing that's keeping the flame on earth is the wick. Take away the wick, the flame will expire and you won't even know where it goes. It disappears. A flame is restless. It's always flickering. It's alive. Again, symbol of the soul. As soon as you become a couch potato, I've been playing tennis recently. So I told a friend of mine playing tennis. He says, "Oh yeah, I'm also playing tennis. Let's play together." So I said, "Okay, where do you want to meet?" He says to me, "Go to something like some GameSpot.com or something." He's playing online. I actually am physically playing, but that's what he thought. That's where it is. So it's like the guy says, "You're into sports?" Yeah, absolutely, I'm into sports. I watch every Sunday football. What's the joke? The joke goes that how many people on a football team? 11? No one even knows yet. That's nice. And on baseball it's 9. So they say baseball is like 70,000 people who need exercise are watching 18 people that don't. Part of the absurdities of life. So the point being that as soon as you become a couch potato, as soon as you become sedentary, as they call it, you cease being restless like a flame. Newborn children, young children, look at them. They're never stopping to move. Their eyes are alive. Their bodies are alive. They're exploring. Everything is enchanting for them. Everything. Things that we've gotten long used to. For a child, look at a child explore its fingers. When's the last time you explored your fingers? You think you got your fingers all figured out, right? But think about the mystery of health. And you'll realize you don't have it figured out. But what happens is we get used to it. That's what it is. We think we have it figured out. And we focus on much more important things, right? We all got very important things to focus on. So the question is, how much of your soul is still flickering? And how much of it has so-called become resigned, and you've just accepted certain things and allowed your material life to weigh you down? Those people that remain and retain that sparkle in the eye, even when they're 80, 90 years old, their souls are alive. But it's not so simple. It's a battle. And it takes effort. It's an uphill battle because physically you can say, listen, a person gets physically older, they don't have as much energy, health, illness, other things. But the soul doesn't age. So the soul is a live flame, a live pilot flame within each of us, and every moment of our lives we have that choice. So those 3 verses, the beginning, we all have beginnings. The world is covered in Tohu Vavohu, in darkness, in confusion and void, and darkness covers all of it. There's a spirit there, hovering, and then comes verse 3, which is, you access that spirit. The Spirit of God hovers over the water in the second verse of the Torah. And you say, Ner Hashem Nishma Sodom. So the Ruach Elikim, Ner Hashem, the Spirit of God is a flame, and that hovers, but it only hovers. Means it's not internalized yet, it's not integrated. It hovers over the waters. And interesting, the word for hover in Hebrew, mirachefes, is a very unique word. You don't see it very often. The Arizal, the great Arizal, the holy mystic, holy Arizal, Isaac Luria, that 16th century mystic who lived in Tzvat, maybe the greatest Kabbalist of all, he explains the word mirachefes is made up of 2 words. Rapach mes. It means 288 died or dead. It's dead. And it refers to, this is somewhat of a Kabbalistic concept, but I'll explain it. It refers to, you may have heard of the idea that the world of Tohu, the world of chaos, is what's called the Shvirat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, of the containers. I'll explain in a moment. I'm just giving you the technical language. And these vessels, as they break, they shatter and they scatter sparks all over the earth. And there are 288 such sparks, which then break down into many more sparks. These sparks are scattered all over the earth. They're embedded in everything in existence. And each of us, when we're sent to earth, is allocated a certain amount of sparks that you're charged with elevating. And your life journey, where God leads your footsteps, and the people you meet, and your personality, and the opportunities, and the places you've been to. Happy Hanukkah, Rabbi Metzger. Who's our host here, so I wanted to thank him. So your life experiences lead you to places to find those sparks. As I said, I'll explain in a moment a little more at length. But why is it called dead? Because when the shattered vessels are like killed vessels, they're like dead. So the 288 sparks are essentially the remainders, the residue that's left over after the death of these containers. But our mission is the next verse. The Spirit of God hovers over the water, hovers, meaning it's concealed within these. The sparks are there, but they're hovering, and they have no place to go home. They're lost until you come. And the third verse, and let there be light. Let there be light means your spark. You find that spark, and you bring it alive. Basically, resurrecting these sparks. So to simplify it in simple English, the following, like this. There's a story with the Baal Shem Tov that he sent his students on a mission, and when they came back, it was an important mission. So they were waiting, anticipating that he's going to ask them whether they fulfill the mission. No, the Baal Shem Tov wanted to know something that to them seemed tangential. He wanted to know how they traveled. So they said they took this road, that road, they went through this town, that town. But where did you rest at night? They said we rested at the side of a road. And what did you have for dinner or for breakfast? So they said they brought along some food, but there was also a brook of water there. And they made a blessing in the morning and they drank some water. And Baal Shem Tov, suddenly his face beaming, jumped up with excitement and said to them, that brook of water was waiting from the beginning of time for you to come and make a blessing. And that was more important to him than the whole mission that they had, which seemed to be completely aside. They were just traveling through. But it's a fundamental lesson the Baal Shem Tov taught, that every place and every experience you will ever have has a spark waiting for you. Even if it's just a stopover. If you fly non-stop, it's non-stop. But stopover, where you think, I'm just here for a while. There's a reason you stop there, because there's something for you to accomplish there. There's a spark for you to bring alive, to elevate. And everything in our life has these sparks. So when you take a piece of food, as the Torah says, in Deuteronomy it says, not on bread alone does a human being live, but on the spark, a divine spark that is embedded in that food. So, when you make a blessing, and you acknowledge that there's some spiritual force inside the piece of food, as the Baal Shem Tov in another place says, your blessing awakens the spark. If you just eat it, body doesn't awaken a body. Your spirit awakens another spirit, which is a very unbelievably beautiful concept. It's like words from the heart enter the heart. Kamayim upon the ponim kain. When just as a face is reflected in water, a heart is reflected in another. You want to touch someone's spirit, you need to come with spirit. Bodies don't touch spirits. You come with spirit, someone's spirit will be touched. So you want to experience the spark, the divine spiritual spark in your experiences, you have to do something. You have to humbly do something. It could be the blessing. It can be, Rabbi, you need some assistance? Yeah. Huh? You need to do something that is soulful, and then it elicits and awakens the soul in another. Any of you taken chemistry? So you know there's the catalyst, right? For you to be able to what's the word for not awaken, to activate or generate something, a chemical reaction, you need to have a catalyst that is similar to that reaction that you want to evoke. You're not going to get it unless you have something that is similar to it. So, essentially, it's our soulful attitude that brings out the soul in other things. And this is something that we are given every moment of our lives, these opportunities. And you have your allocation of sparks, and your sparks are not my sparks. Only you can elevate yours, and only I can do mine. So it's just an amazing way of looking at life, and looking at your life experiences. So just step back for a moment. You have your job, you have your family, you have the places you live, the places you travel to, your country home, your car, the gas station you go to. All the little trivial things. These are all pre-planned for you to be something there, to find the sparks that are in that place. For you to be, as I said, a walking menorah that illuminates others. But you can't just rely on just being walking. You have to behave like a menorah. You have to behave like a flame. And when you behave like a flame, you elicit the flame within others. It's a given. And you cannot wait and say, you know what, wait till that person is more illuminating to me, then I'll be illuminating to them. That's like the guy that goes to therapy for years, and his wife finally says, no, so what's accomplishing? What did you accomplish? He says, I learned about unconditional love. She said, really? She's been waiting for that, to hear that for years. He says, yeah, if you give me unconditional love, I'll give you unconditional love, So that, of course, is the blind leading the blind, and we're waiting for somebody else to awaken us. The adults in this world, people who are secure, don't have to wait for someone else to make a move. They have the confidence to make the move, and when you do it and you initiate light returns to you. Now, of course, anyone will ask the question: why is it then often I'm kind to somebody, I'm compassionate and kind, and they don't pay back, they don't repay it with kindness? First of all, we don't always see the impact we have on others. It could take years. Sometimes you could have a kindness to someone, they may not repay it at the time, but down the line, somewhere, you've opened a little door. And maybe it'll take 50 more knocks on the door to elicit something. It's not justifying another person's obnoxiousness. But it doesn't, just because something doesn't, you don't always see the impact of what you do, doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. And people, again, who are secure and are people who give off light and warmth, don't worry, don't do statistics and account and say, how much light have I given, what have I gotten in return. It doesn't work that way. Now, obviously, you have to have discretion and know where to put your energy. You could spend your time with somebody who needs help, and after a while you realize that as much as you do, you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. But that's already a question of assessment, of determining where to really invest your time and energy. But to suggest that you should be less of an illuminator, less of a source of light and warmth because you don't always get it in return, doesn't always reciprocate, is not the attitude of a true walking menorah. These flames will burn and illuminate no matter what, no matter how we behave. So that's also a lesson. Because when you have it in you, you give. And then you have to find, as I said, discretion, determine where to give in the most effective way. And it shouldn't be abused, it shouldn't be taken advantage of. So I'm not suggesting some type of naive attitude that you can just try to be compassionate to everyone and everything is always going to be great. You have to know how to do it also in a focused way. But the key thing is that it's not driven by me, but driven by the flame within each of us. So that's the story, as I said in the 3 verses. And every word is precise. In that second verse where it talks about chaos, tohu vavohu, chaos and void. And the darkness covered apnei hatayim, the whole existence. And the Spirit of God hovered. It's there, the sparks are there, but the sparks have to be now ignited. They have to be lit. They have to be kindled, and they have to be maybe even better than that. They have to be flamed. They have to be fanned. So every soul has enormous potential. But like anything, if it's a pilot flame, it remains undercover. And when you fan those flames, that's when your soul actualizes itself in our lives. So even a criminal in prison has a soul. But what's the difference between one person and the next is, what have you done to actualize this soul? You can have a healthy heart, but God forbid you can have blocked arteries, and that can cause a stroke or a heart attack. So the soul remains a fire of flame, but the challenge is to channel it into our lives. So we actually actualize it. Are we also not just flames within, but also flames without, which means that our behavior, our thoughts, our speech, our action, our interactions are also flaming with light and with warmth. So to just take this a little deeper, a step further, especially those of you that want to our resident. We have a resident Kohen. We have resident Kabbalists, mystics. So I mentioned the first book of the Torah. The Torah itself begins with the story of the beginning, darkness, light. Now comes two other classic books. One, the Zohar, and the second, the Eitz Chaim. The Zohar is maybe the great classic, the greatest and the original Bible of mysticism. The book authored by the Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, written by a student, Rav Abba. It also begins, interestingly, parallels very similarly how the Torah begins, and that is, it talks right in the beginning, in very cryptic terms, that in the beginning of it all, there was a lamp of darkness. And that remains a cryptic term until the Arizal deciphers it. And the Arizal deciphers it by saying, in the beginning of his book called Eitz Chaim, the book of the Tree of Life, he also begins. He says, in the beginning, there was the infinite divine light that that filled all of existence. There was no existence yet. And then it says that God concealed this light, and you have the great symptom, the black hole. That's the lamp of darkness. And then it says, the Arizal continues, this black hole, this space, this void, allowed room for another reality to emerge. Because as long as the divine unity was all-encompassing and all indivisible, nothing else could really emerge. Think of it like a brilliant teacher just shining forth. So all the students would simply be blown away by the light. It would be like looking at the sunlight without shades. It would be too powerful, too bright, too blinding. And here it's infinitely more so with the divine light. So God concealed His presence, allowing for an independent reality like us to sense that I'm here. The fact that I feel I exist and you feel you exist, which, as I said earlier, is somewhat of a delusion. We do exist, but we're all part of one reality, and we don't sense that. That's because there's a fundamental concealment of the divine in our existence. But even in this darkness, the Arizal explains in other places, his students explain, that there's a Spirit of God hovers over the waters. The Spirit of God hovers over the waters means that within this dark black hole there's still residue. It's called the Rishimu. There's residue of light, though you can't really discern it, but it's there. It's hovering. And then comes the next step, which is the third verse, Vayhi Ar, let there be light, and that is the Kav. As the Arizal says, within this black hole now is drawn a thin ray of light. Thin ray of light. It's called the Kav Chut. A thread of light that enters into this dark space, and that begins to create and emerge existence as we know it. So this is all the Kabbalistic language. In simple English, it means the following. When a great teacher, let's think of a teacher that is infinitely more brilliant than the students. The first thing that the teacher has to do is conceal all his ideas. Because the teacher just opens his mouth without any type of without any type of what's the word for it? Right, without any type of filter, there was no way that the students will be able to receive. So the first thing he does is conceal. He collects his thoughts or her thoughts and prepares himself, and sometimes like a quantum leap of a moment of silence that the teacher has to prepare before it begins to transmit. Then he begins to transmit a thin ray of light. That's how knowledge is transmitted. It's spoon-fed, step by step by step. When you teach a child, for example, ABC, what are you teaching the child? You think about what's ABC. We know as adults that the ABC will allow you to realize there's 26 letters in the alphabet. When you start combining letters, they turn into words. Words turn into sentences. Sentences turn into paragraphs. Paragraphs turn into chapters. Chapters turn into volumes. And volumes turn into books. So all of knowledge is contained in those 26 letters. But from the student's perspective, the child's perspective, there's no clue. At that point, it's a very narrow transmission of light, just letters. A, B, C. Learn how to say A, B, C. Then we combine the letters. This is the example of a thin ray of light coming from a much more brilliant place. But the only way to transmit it, the only way to grow, is to acclimate and assimilate these ideas, is to do it step by step. It's like climbing a ladder. It's like stepping stones. And ultimately, this student could end up being as great as the teacher, if not greater, but it has to come through this thin ray of light. So the message, the essence of what the Arizal is saying is what I said earlier, but a little more elaborate and a little more, comprehensive. That in life, we live in a world that is shrouded in darkness, as I mentioned. It's easy to lie in this world. What's deception if not darkness? Keeping people in the dark. You can smile to someone and then stab them in the back. What darker experience is that? That means you don't see what you see is not what you get. We live in a duplicitous world, a world of duality, a world of deception, a world of lies. It's just another form of darkness. Our mission, as I said, is to bring light into this world. But you can't do it in one quick, cold turkey. You have to acclimate. You have to train people. You have to educate. And people who are accustomed to living a certain type of, let's say, selfish life, you can't just say to them, listen, drop it all. You have to teach them on their terms, like you teach a child ABC, how to bring light into their lives. And that's where the real challenge is. The concept that we all have to bring light, that's very nice. But to actually do it requires a very, very sensitive and wise approach. How do you bring it into a world that's not necessarily receptive? The fact of the matter is, most people are driven by their daily needs, by financial stuff, by material, by entertainment. Very few people are just ready to give everything away just to find the truth. The classic Hanukkah-related story about this man who spent his whole life searching for the truth. And he went everywhere, all over the world, looking for the truth. He went to rabbis, imams, priests, traveled to the east, journeyed to the east, and to the west, and to the north, and to the south, looking for the truth. Now he's already deep in his middle age, like 65, 70 years old at this point. He still has not found what he's looking for. So he finally meets this old sage. And he tells him his life story. He says, I've been raised 65 years, I've been looking for the truth. And the sage looks at him and says to him, and what kind of price would you pay for this truth? He says, the price I paid my whole life, I'd pay everything. There's nothing more important to me than to discover the truth. Is this sound working? So the sage looks at him and says to him, I'll take your word for it. I will tell you a place where you'll find it. And he gives him directions to a distant land, and that land, certain specific place in a forest. He says, you follow these directions, you're going to come to a building, and that building is called the House of Truth. And there you'll find the truth. Okay, he embarks. And the sage seemed to know what he was talking about. And he embarks on this journey, which to him was maybe going to be the final journey of his life, to find the truth. He finally comes and finds this big building, an enormous building, middle of nowhere. And he slowly, very tentatively, walks over to the building, gets inside, and he walks in. He sees a sight that, to behold. Long corridors, and they're all brightly lit. And what are they brightly lit with? Flames of all shapes and forms and sizes. Tall flames, short flames, large flames. Flames, all rows and rows and rows of candles and flames, and wicks and flames. Some are about to burn out, some are brightly lit, some are fresh, some are burning for years. And as he's staring at this spectacle, suddenly a man comes over to him. And he sees a man, like the overseer of this house of light, house of truth. And the man says, what can I do for you? And he tells him that he met this and the sage, and the sage sent him here, told him here's where you can find the truth. He says, yes, This is the house of truth. You see, and what are these flames? So these flames are the true story of every person's life. Every person on earth has a flame in this room. And if you study their flame, you'll see their life. The flame tells a story. Every flame tells its story. And you see these very bright, big flames that are just beginning to burn. These are new lives. They're just children just born. They have all the oil in their container. And those little flames that you see about to burn out are the people who are about to die, coming to the end of their lives. But everyone is their life story. So of course, he takes a gulp and says, well, where is my flame? So the man says, you walk down row number 8, the 40th table, you'll find there a flame. That describes exactly where that flame is. And this man walks very slowly, very carefully, very tentatively, and as he gets closer, to his shock, he sees his flame is about to burn out, which means it's the end of the line. So he looks around, suddenly gets very panics, looks around, makes sure nobody's watching, and he takes another container and pours oil into his flame. Suddenly he sees the two eyes of the caretaker of this building looking at him and said, so you're ready to pay any price for the truth, huh? That means, when bottom line came down, he saw that he was about to go, he was ready to do something that was deceptive. So be careful what you ask for, basically. In other words, we all like to say we'd love to see the truth. Do you think you really can see the naked truth and be ready to accept it? So, most of us would think, okay, the truth, I want to see the total truth. The fact is that we human beings are part of a reality that if you saw the absolute truth, you probably would not be able to handle it. As disturbing as the thought may be. Which is why that truth has to be given to you and to me in a way that we can listen. It has to be packaged. If it's packaged by the proper type of teacher, by the proper type of people who do see the truth, then you learn to grow with it. That's why you'll find the great masters in history, the real ones, never told anybody really what to do. But they said enough that you had a direction. And if you were wise enough, you would take it. And the greatest ones never wanted you have to own your choices, because it takes a heavy price to really accept the total truth. So if you went into a true mentor and said, tell me my destiny, even if he knew it, he would never tell you. As they say, those that know don't say, and those that say don't know. Especially those that charge money for it. Because your destiny is your destiny. And even if someone else can see truths that you may not be able to see, if they really know it, they're not here to show off. They're not here to impress you. They're here to help you. So the people you'll meet that will help set you straight or give you some direction are the people that may not be so dramatic. It's not like someone with a crystal ball and tells you, here's where you should go, that's where you're going to find the truth, and so on. Most of us would not listen, and even if we did, we wouldn't appreciate it. Part of the appreciation of it is the effort. If it's given on a platter, it usually doesn't work. Part of it is the effort. But you have to know that you've given all the wisdom you need. It's like you have all the tools, but now you have to find them. So all of us have the ability to find that light that we have to shine in this world. And we all have the strength to overcome all the challenges. But it's not as black and white as, okay, suddenly I'm going to just do it all. It has to come stage by stage, and it's usually healthiest when it does have some ulterior motives. If it's purely selfless, I wouldn't trust it. Because the fact is, most of us are driven by self-interest. I say most of us simply to, all of us are driven by self-interest. So someone suddenly says, I have no more self-interest, I'm just doing it for God or for the cause, I would be quite wary. If someone says, I have some self-interest, but I also want to do it for the cause, then you're talking. So it's important to find a place that works for each of us. That's why it's a kav. It's a ray of light that enters into our existence. It's a flame. If we were to suddenly light big flames that would consume the earth, these are small flames. You can even ignore them if you choose to, or you can listen to their story. As one of the Rebbe says, we have to listen to what the flames tell us. They tell us a story. But they tell it in a very gentle way. Look how a flame tells a story. It's like a parent telling a gentle bedtime story to a child. It's not threatening. It's not overwhelming. It's kind. But if you allow it, it can change your whole life. Because this is the story of the flame, and it's speaking to us who are primarily wick human beings. We're driven by the wick. We're material creatures. And as material creatures, it's not like someone can come and just tell you know what? You're living a lie. You've been living for 40, 50, 20, 30 years, and you think you got it all figured out? You don't have anything figured out. How many people can really hear that? Even if it were true. Even if it's someone that you trusted. It's very hard to hear that. First of all, it's too much to say that, my whole life I'm wrong. And even if you could hear it, what am I supposed to do with that now? What should I do? Quit everything I'm doing? The key thing is to give someone tools, and that's what the kav does. It shines a light, but it's not a light that overwhelms the whole dark black hole. It's a light that slowly penetrates, and step by step, just like a good education. And you plant a seed, then you plant another seed, and that seed then blossoms, and then it blossoms. Some of the greatest things that will happen in your life will not happen the moment that you heard that truth. It'll plant a seed inside of you, and then it'll have a delay reaction. There'll come the moment when it will suddenly emerge. And then you realize, when you're wise, that that's really what was said to me. That was the meaning and the purpose behind it all. Like trees don't suddenly become big trees. A seed is planted. You nurture it. You water it. It blossoms into it sprouts. It slowly grows. And you come 20, 30 years later, a tree, great tree. It's a lesson in life. The journey. And the same is true in the truth that we assimilate into our lives. Now obviously, if we can begin early, if you can teach your children from day one, when they emerge on this earth, teach them their purpose of life, and don't let them ever get distracted from it, that's of course the best. That's a powerhouse. But most of us, we did not get that in our lives. We went to school, even healthy parents. Where do you discover your soul? Where do you discover God? Where do you discover purpose? It's usually by accident, in time of crisis. We get older. It's not like school and education is all leading us to find your purpose. It's leading you to develop tools to make some money, at best, the best schools. To find purpose is something that's not in anyone's real curriculum, agenda. Besides the fact that our school system is terrified of teaching values of that nature, it's too threatening. So the earlier we begin, obviously, the better. But as we get older, the better. The way to do it has to be done in a way that works on your terms. And I deal with this all the time. People on their journey in Judaism, and they questions, how fast to go, or you have people who are partners or getting married or other things, and you want to know what should we embrace, what shouldn't we embrace, etc., etc. And the key thing is always to move forward. You don't want to ever stagnate or move backwards, but you have to move forward in a way that you can integrate it, that you can assimilate it. It's like spoon feeding. You can't swallow more. You can't bite off more than you can chew. And the key things, people have taught very recently, more than once. People talk to me about they meet two people getting engaged to get married, and they're both different places, Jewish-wise, commitment-wise, tradition-wise. So for me, it's always the litmus test is not whether two people will never be in the same exact place. It's impossible. The question is really what direction they're going. If this person, let's say, is very committed, but they're going like this, and this person who's not committed is going like this, you can imagine that at some point it's going to be like that. So that's the problem. But if two people are going, one is here and one is here, and they're both going in that direction, you have a partnership. So when someone asks you, like two people standing on a mountain, one down at the bottom of the mountain, one on top of the mountain, who's higher? So the immediate reaction, everyone will say, of course, the person on top of the mountain. That's not the answer. The answer is what direction they're going. Because it's just a matter of mechusar zman, a matter of time. If this person is going like this, and this person is going like that, right now he's on top and this one's on the bottom. But in a little time, this one will be on the bottom, that one will be on top. And that takes a little more sensitivity, a lot more sensitivity to recognize the direction people are going. And everybody goes at their pace, and there's no cookie cutter model, because each of us is different. And as I said, each of us has our allocation of sparks, and just a matter of knowing how to give people the strength to forge ahead. And that's why it's almost impossible. Like, I'm often asked questions by somebody on behalf of a third party. Just happened today, happens almost every day actually. Someone says, I have a friend and so on, have this and this issue. When it comes to these sensitive matters of like how to travel and these type of things, I always say the same thing. There's no way to answer through a third party. Because you have to see the person. You can't talk to someone through another person. First of all, they may not even be reporting it accurately. Secondly, and I'm not even talking about a complicated, necessarily a confrontational situation, just a regular advice. Secondly, you have to speak to the person because every person is different when it comes to these type of matters. People move differently. Some people are different. Some people move quick. Some people move slow. Everybody has their own resistance. And a true spiritual educator, someone that really touches your heart and soul, is someone that doesn't know or just know the information, but they know how to package it is the right word. How to what's another word for package? It sounds too marketing from my point of view. Whatever. Any word for package? Distill. Okay, that's a good word. Distill. They know how to distill it. Yeah, that's good. They know how to distill it in a way that fits the person that's receiving it. Because more than love, real love is also knowing how to give it. And that's something that's harder to master. There are many people who are very loving human beings. I mean, everyone has love in their heart. But people are loving human beings. But love is not something that you just give. It requires also discipline, how to give. Look at the rainfall. Rain is a loving thing. It waters the fields. It makes things grow. Without rain, we wouldn't have life. Yet the rain doesn't come down in buckets, which would flood the fields. The beauty of rain is it comes down in raindrops. And if you look at raindrops, look at them how they're absorbed into the ground. It's absorbed, and when it's absorbed enough, the more rain comes down. In other words, it does it at exactly the right pace. And when there's a flood, it will destroy the fields. That's a perfect lesson in life. To give, but to give in a way that the one who's receiving can absorb it. And that requires much more discretion. That's why it's a kav. Let there be light. It's not just a light, it's a light. Every night we light Hanukkah, another flame. The flame itself is not overwhelming. We're not lighting bonfires. We're not lighting loud and dramatic flames. It's very quiet ones. But their message is there, and if you listen to it, it tells you a lot. We just said, when we just sang in Haner Salolu, it says, Ein lanu reshus, we have no permission to use these flames, only to look at them. Interesting concept. In other words, there's a certain measure of humility. The flames are teaching us a sacred thing, and it's not just for your selfish use, because the whole message of the flame is to be not selfish. But to look at it, look at me, but don't touch me. Look, but don't use me. Don't sell me. Don't commercialize me. So that's another lesson. And if you go down the list of Hanukkah flames, you'll find many, many messages. Some that I've mentioned here, some that I haven't. But it all comes down to is that we do live in a dark existence, a dark universe. And our souls are trapped in this dark world. But there is a light that remains burning all the time. They call light at the end of the tunnel. Is not the lights of the oncoming train, as I like to say. It's an actual light. And that there is, within this dark hole, within this black hole of existence, within the loneliness, existential loneliness, within sometimes the dreariness, the gloominess of the shadows, lies a powerful, powerful light. Look at a black hole. What is a black hole? In science today, one of the big, exciting ideas that has been discovered in the last decades has been black matter, or black holes. Dark matter, they call it. They discovered that dark matter is not just a small part of the universe, but I think 80 or 90% of the mass of the universe, they say today, is dark matter. Now, it's dark matter, how do we know? We've never seen it. But you see its effect on its environment. Black hole was predicted by Einstein, then he regretted it, and then they discovered it to be, they confirmed it. A black hole essentially is a star whose gravitational pull is so powerful it doesn't even let light escape. So how do we know it's there? Because you see the surrounding stars or the surrounding environment, you see a very powerful pull. It's affecting all the bodies that come close to it. So you don't imagine you look at something, you don't see anything, but you see everything around it is moving erratically. There must be something there. It's like There's some human beings like that too. You don't see them, but you see everyone around them is behaving strangely. You know there's something there that's probably not so healthy. So a black hole, therefore, is actually more light than a regular shining star. But the power is so intense, more power, I should say. The power is so intense, the energy is so intense, it doesn't let any light escape. So that's like the tzimtzum. But all is not lost. Within there is a spark. So within our existence, there are plenty of sparks, and it's our job is to ignite them, to illuminate them. When we come together like a Hanukkah night like this, and we sit here together, and hopefully share nice words and loving words that are empowering, that allow each of us to go back to our respective sparks in the world and do something with them, be a catalyst. So right here we're connecting as sparks. And you'll know it. When you're in an environment where you feel cared for, where you feel respected, where you feel that you have a majesty, you have a unique contribution to make, and the people around you make you feel that way, then your soul knows it's in the right place. And the rest of the time, we're in places where we're constantly trying to protect ourselves and against the forces or people around us who want something from us, who want to sell us something, and so on. So I'm not suggesting let your guard down, but I'm suggesting is that you have to be a catalyst. The best defense is offense. When you come into a room, when you come to an environment, it's not just wait around and see who's going to be nice to you. You generate it, and when you generate it, you'll see people are attracted to light. That's how it works. When there's a dark street and there's one flame, that's where everyone gathers. Because that's where you're attracted to. So instead of waiting for someone to be your light, why don't you become the light? And then others will be attracted, and you'd be surprised what kind of reaction comes out of that. To take the initiative in different situations. It's something that we're not necessarily always trained to do. Sometimes we're ashamed, or we are, we are very much affected by peer pressure, by social pressure, by other people's expectations, and so on. But you'd be surprised. This world, every person on this earth deserves and is waiting for a light. Not everyone has the courage to initiate it, so they wait. Unfortunately, they sometimes wait half their life away. So we're here Hanukkah night, and we've been celebrating it now for close to 2,500 years. And the light has not been extinguished. It's burned and burned and burned, even through the Holocaust, even through the darkest times. So today we have no excuse. Because today we don't have any communists or Nazis or Cossacks or inquisitors or crusaders not letting us light Hanukkah flames. Today the enemy, as I said, is within. We can light the flames easily. No one's going to arrest us for this. No one's going to deprive us of oil. No one's defiling our oil. Today, the challenge is whether you will take the initiative, whether we will actually use our freedoms, not take them for granted, not squander them, and actually serve as those type of role models. So you have your sparks, they've been given to you, and now our job is to go find them and ignite them. And then they make you stronger, and they make the sparks stronger. And our coming together here is really a type of like, I guess, a mobilization here, And now we have to go back into the battlefield. And do our battles. But these battles are, thank God, healthy battles. They're not about weapons and pain and death and destruction. It's about the battle of who's going to win the tug of war, the wick or the flame, your soul or the body, the material world or its spiritual energy within, the spiritual soul within. And that's up to each of us and every day. So I hope this Hanukkah, starting from tonight and tomorrow, empowers us this way. May these flames empower the flame within each of us, and may our flame within each of us empower everything and everyone we come in contact with today and tomorrow and so on. And you do this, you keep doing it, you'll see your life changes. So may you all be walking menorahs, and when we meet next time in the streets of Manhattan, we don't even have to say anything. All we have to do is wink to each other, and we know that we're in the same team. The flames that are keepers of the flame, that are trying to counterbalance of all the indecisiveness and the darkness and chaos. In the second verse, that let there be light. That guy that said, I used to be indecisive, today I'm not so sure. So That, of course, is a symbol, ultimate epitome of darkness and confusion. So our job is to bring some clarity to the world, starting clarity to ourselves. So may we all be these walking menorahs and make that choice, flame or wick. It's pretty clear, pretty stark. Two options. And everyone should have a happy Hanukkah, an illuminating Hanukkah, as I said at the outset, a Hanukkah that awakens or reignites, rejuvenates your inner flame, and should be blessings in health and in our homes and families and children and those that need to find the soulmates and marriage and healthy marriages and healthy relationships, and all with, and as I said, good health and good parnasa in this unpredictable environment, and to fulfill our calling of illuminating and warming the world around us. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. Thank you.